Hi everyone, so Han and I did our project on Cuban socialism and public service provisions, and we would just like to first thank Dr. Fabry, of course, and also Dr. Vaughn for helping us with our project. So to start, a brief background of Cuba and the United States. So after the Cuban Revolution ended in 1959, Castro took over the Cuban government and enacted many policies. These included nationalizing oil refineries and property, many of which were owned by people in the US, and this really angered the United States. So in October of 1960, the Eisenhower administration put an economic embargo into effect against Cuba, and this has definitely fluctuated in strength throughout different US administrations. Generally, under Democratic administrations, it has been looser, and under Republican administrations, it has tightened up. But despite this fluctuation, more than 60 years have passed since the onset of the embargo, and the embargo still remains in place today. So our research question is there a link between Cuba's struggles to provide public service provisions to its citizens under socialism and the United States' economically driven embargo and sanctions against the country? So we conducted a literature review, and we found two primary schools of thought here. The first is that the US embargo and sanctions against Cuba are the driving force in the state's struggles to provide public service provisions, and the second is that the internal socialist structure of Cuba is the driving force in the state's struggles to provide public service provisions. So the second school of thought, basically socialism itself and the structures that Cuba has set up that cause problems, while the first school obviously disagrees. So here our theory is, so we went with the first school of thought because we found that to be the most compelling argument, and we also wanted to close some gaps in its argument. So we went with the theory that the US embargo and sanctions against Cuba are the driving force behind Cuba's struggles to provide public service provisions to their people. And now Hannah's going to go on with our research design and our findings.
So because much of the literature is from the 90s, we will be closing a gap and resolving a debate. To do this, we compare the W. Bush and Obama administrations' very different policies toward Cuba, with Cuba's ability to adequately provide PSPs. The Obama administration is well known for their steps to normalize relations and ease restrictions. So our independent variable is the U.S. administration, and the dependent variable is public service provisions. The data available was limited, but we used all measurements that we could find. To test for significance between the two administrations, we conducted two sample t-tests for each measurement. We tested the data during the W. Bush years against data during Obama years, and out of 9 measurements, only 3 were found to have insignificant p-values. Those were maternal mortality rate, primary school enrollment, and food security. The rest saw positive significance going from the W. Bush to the Obama years. When looking at the data, we saw that in general, the numbers and rate of change were more stable in the Obama years, and there was less fluctuation in values. As the t-test indicated, the embargo's loosening during Obama years had positive significance on many PSPs. These results implicate both the US and Cuba. They show the US that Cuba is not a useful example of a socialist state failing to provide PSPs, which is common rhetoric in the American political and sometimes academic field. And then they show Cuba that it's in their best interest to achieve diplomatic relations with the United States because it ultimately aids in their ability to provide public service provisions.